Here's why Larys Strong betrayed his own house by serving Alicent and the Greens. Imagine being born into one of the most powerful families in Westeros, a house whose name carries weight, influence, and respect throughout the realm. Now imagine turning away from your own kin to serve those who oppose your family's interests, pledging loyalty to a faction that could not care less about your legacy. This is the story of Larys Strong, a man whose cunning, ambition, and ruthlessness allowed him to rise to prominence, but whose betrayal of House Strong would forever stain his name. Larys Strong's decision to serve Alicent Hightower and the Greens during the Targaryen succession crisis is one of the most intriguing, and chilling, acts of treachery in Westerosi history. But why did he betray his own house, and what drove a man from a house of honor to serve the very faction that undermined it? To understand, we must delve into Larys' upbringing, his motivations, and the political machinations that shaped his life. Larys Strong was not like other members of House Strong. While his relatives, particularly figures like Sir Harwin Strong, relied on physical strength, honor, and traditional loyalty, Larys was a man of intellect, cunning, and secrecy. He understood early on that in a world as treacherous as Westeros, power was not always won with swords or brute force. It was often seized through manipulation, knowledge, and the ability to anticipate the desires and weaknesses of those around you. Larys' mind was sharp, calculating, and often devoid of moral hesitation. From his earliest years, it was clear that he would not follow the straightforward path of his family. He would forge a path of shadows, intrigue, and subtlety. The political climate of Westeros during Larys' rise could not have been more volatile. King Viserys I's choice to name his daughter Rhaenyra as heir divided the court into two factions: the Greens, who supported Alicent Hightower and her children, and the Blacks, who backed Rhaenyra. For a young man like Larys, this was not merely a time of uncertainty, it was an opportunity. In a realm where alliances could be bought, manipulated, or exploited, Larys saw a chance to elevate himself far beyond the influence he might have had as a loyal member of House Strong. Yet, pursuing this opportunity required a betrayal that few could imagine, a betrayal of his own kin, his own family's interests, and the values that House Strong was reputed to uphold. One of the central reasons Larys betrayed his own house was ambition. Unlike his kin, who relied on honor and martial prowess, Larys understood that survival and advancement often required flexibility, cunning, and moral compromise. Serving the Greens, he realized, could provide him with unparalleled influence at court, access to secrets, and the ability to shape events from the shadows. His loyalty was not to family, nor to tradition, it was to power. Larys understood that aligning with Alicent Hightower, the Queen, and her faction would place him in the center of decision-making, allowing him to manipulate events, accumulate knowledge, and consolidate his position. Betrayal, for Larys, was a tool, a calculated move in a game where stakes were life, legacy, and dominion. Larys' upbringing also played a role in his willingness to betray his house. Raised in a family known for strength and loyalty, he was acutely aware of his differences from his kin. While his relatives wielded swords and relied on physical dominance, Larys relied on observation, intelligence, and psychological manipulation. This difference created a kind of tension, a recognition that traditional paths to power were insufficient for someone of his particular talents. By choosing to serve the Greens, Larys was not merely betraying his family, he was asserting his own identity, defining power on his own terms, and refusing to be limited by the expectations of birthright or blood. Larys' personal philosophy regarding power and loyalty was pragmatic, almost Machiavellian. He recognized that Westeros rewarded cunning and punishes hesitation. House Strong's traditional values, honor, loyalty, and martial prowess, were admirable but limiting in a world where intrigue often decided the fates of kings and princes. Larys' betrayal, then, was a conscious embrace of a philosophy that placed intelligence, foresight, and ruthlessness above familial duty. Serving Alicent and the Greens allowed him to operate in a space where his talents could be maximized, his influence expanded, and his presence felt at the highest levels of power. But ambition alone does not fully explain Larys Strong's betrayal. There was also a psychological dimension. Larys exhibited traits that suggest a fascination with control, secrecy, and the ability to manipulate outcomes. Betraying his own house gave him a sense of power that could not be matched by mere martial skill. It allowed him to operate in shadows, to influence events invisibly, and to wield influence in a manner that his physically dominant kin could not. In essence, Larys' betrayal was both strategic and psychological, a calculated exercise of dominance over a world that often measured worth in swords and strength, rather than intellect and subtlety. Serving Alicent Hightower offered Larys immediate and long-term advantages. The Queen's faction was politically astute, well-positioned, and intent on securing power for her children. By pledging loyalty to the Greens, Larys gained access to confidential information, influence over key decisions, and the ability to shape outcomes without exposing himself to the dangers faced by those on the front lines. Unlike the more straightforward, honor-driven members of House Strong, Larys thrived in an environment where discretion, cunning, and adaptability were paramount. His betrayal was a path to personal elevation, providing him with both protection and agency within a turbulent political landscape. Larys' actions, however, were not without moral and familial consequences. Betraying one's own house is no small matter, particularly in Westeros, where family, honor, and lineage are deeply valued. By serving the Greens, Larys placed himself in opposition to his own kin, undermining House Strong's position, and aligning himself with those who were actively working against his family's interests. The decision reflects a willingness to prioritize personal gain and strategic advantage over loyalty, tradition, and kinship, a choice that would forever mark his legacy with a combination of respect, fear, and suspicion. The nature of Larys' betrayal also reflects his understanding of risk and reward. Unlike more conventional actors, he was not blinded by loyalty or moral obligation. He assessed situations pragmatically. He calculated that the benefits of serving the Greens, information, influence, and protection, far outweighed the potential costs to his family or his reputation. This strategic mindset is central to understanding Larys Strong. He was a man who viewed betrayal not as shameful, but as a rational, calculated tool in the pursuit of survival and power. In this sense, his actions exemplify a form of intelligence and foresight rarely seen in the brutal, often impulsive world of Westeros. Political dynamics also played a significant role. The Targaryen succession crisis created an environment in which allegiances were tested, and traditional loyalties became liabilities. For Larys, the Greens represented stability, access, and opportunity. Aligning with Alicent Hightower placed him at the center of the faction most capable of controlling the court and influencing the outcome of the succession. By betraying his own house, Larys was not merely acting out of self-interest, he was strategically positioning himself within a faction that would define the political future of the realm. His betrayal was, in many ways, a masterstroke of opportunism. It is also worth noting that Larys Strong's betrayal was deeply intertwined with his personality. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he did not value honor for its own sake. He understood honor as a tool, a way to maintain appearances and influence perception, but not as a constraint on action. His decisions were guided by pragmatism, foresight, and a keen understanding of human behavior. By serving Alicent and the Greens, he exercised control over situations that others might have left to chance, exploiting weaknesses and opportunities in a manner that required both intellect and patience. The impact of Larys' betrayal extended far beyond his immediate personal gain. By undermining House Strong's cohesion, he contributed to the broader instability that defined the Targaryen succession crisis. His actions weakened the position of those who might have opposed the Greens,